things himself, and he described it something that was explosive if he connected something the wrong way. In his story, he connected something that he knew was going to explode, and he describes this like split second moment where he connected it and then he thinks like, "Oh shoot, this is going to blow up in my face." And you know that little feeling when something like that happens where time slows down? This guy describes this in his garage. And he knew that this was going to be a big explosion and there was nothing he could do about it. And I'm going to just use my memory here. It's like he closed his eyes and he opened them, and he was on the other side of his garage facing the opposite direction. And he said he waited, and it was like longer than he expected for the explosion to happen, but it did happen. Then he says he was wondering, since it was so loud, he was waiting for his wife to come running in from the house because he knew that she heard it. Like he knew where she was or what she was doing when that happened, and he said she should have just opened the door right then and there. He said, but he estimated it was a good 60 seconds and he couldn't figure that out. His wife like opens the door after a minute and he says, "Don't worry, I'm okay. I wasn't close by the explosion." The story goes on where later he mentions that he looked something up on the internet that the United States military has the ability to detect time distortions or time anomalies or whatever you want to call these things. But he said he does live somewhat close to a military base. And he knew some of the guys that, like some of the soldiers or some people that worked there. And they actually lived close by him. He said he wasn't he wasn't like friends with them per se, but he kind of knew they were in the neighborhood. After this happened, he moseyed on out to his truck one day, or his car one day, or whatever, and one of the military guys was there. He said the conversation somewhere went along the lines of, "Hey, so, we know you work on stuff, you're always tinkering in your garage or something like that, and rumor is you got a time machine in there. Are you going to show us your time machine you're working on?" And he's like, "What?" So I think this happened a couple times. It wasn't just one guy. Like a couple guys like started asking him about it. Like they're like, "There's a rumor going around that built a time machine or something like that." But he thought that it was weird that right when that happened, these guys started asking him and actually using the words time machine. It's like, "No, I never built a time machine." He didn't elaborate, and the story didn't go on much after that. There's a couple stories like this, and I tried to find these again after I heard about them or read about them. The other one is like sometimes these people just kind of like pass out or something and they kind of go somewhere else. One was a guy, had some friends over, and he reached into the cooler to grab a beer or something, and he said he never kind of stood back up or when he did stand up, he like passed out. And he said this was like modern day times, like somewhere between, the past 5 years or something, like 2018 to 2020 or whatever. And he said he was in a totally different country. He knew he was in like England or the UK at a train station in the 1800s. He's like, "I just knew that when I was there." Not only that, but there was somebody there that knew I time traveled. So he was like, and I hear this before. Like there was another one where this girl goes to a dance club. I guess she went to walk across the dance floor, and a guy tried to stop her, and she like wouldn't let him stop her. She walks across the dance floor, and as she steps into the dance floor, she gets like kind of transported into another version of the dance club that's like futuristic looking, but it was kind of disturbing in a couple different ways. She described this like the music being so loud all of a sudden that she could hardly stand it, and the music got really ugly and like mechanical sounding or something like that. And then the people were like half naked, or some of them were totally naked, and they were like really aggressive towards her when like they soon realized she was there, and they started like being like really aggressive, like sexually almost to her. And I think she described some of them as being able to float up into the air and stuff like that. And then she just like came right back to the normal dance where she started off as, like present day dance club. And her friends were like looking for her. So there's always like this element of people knowing when you're gonna like all of a sudden glitch into another thing, or not always, but a lot of times there's someone there, even if you do it just with like your consciousness, like these people that pass out and end up somewhere else, or these people that have lucid dreams and they go to a different timeline, and there's always Almost always. There's someone there that knows that it happened. They're not happy that it happened. So the guy that ended up in the train station ended up just waking back up in his, either his house or his friend's house, and they were like, "You passed out," and he was like, "No, I didn't really pass out. I kind of went somewhere." So I guess you don't always need these like psychedelics. It just kind of happens naturally. I mean, how many weird stories is there of people just falling asleep and then they wake up like living in, they're in a totally different timeline, a different thing. Like, so it's not always the mystery of consciousness and the mystery of our realm is so weird. Anyway, the name of this post is I was in bullet time, and this is a Reddit post. I was lying in bed with a large table lamp nearby, with a single incandescent bulb that I could see from my position. I was talking to my mother, I was in my late teens, who was standing near the door to the room. As she was talking, I heard this thin, crystalline buzzing sound coming from my left. I turn my head, and the sound comes from the light bulb. Then it explodes, and I see it clearly as a super slow motion. First, the pieces still in the shape on the dome of the bulb, but with the slits opening up. Then opening up more like a flower, blooming at the top. At this point, I realize that the glass is going to hit my face, so I grab the sheets and put them over my head and lie down. Only then do I hear the pop sound of the light bulb exploding and feel pieces of glass falling on the sheets. I take my head out, and my mother looks at me amazed. How did you know it was going to explode? She saw me covering before the explosion. I have no idea how or why it happened, but I was convinced that we could hack the way we move within time. We just don't know exactly how, right? Now, this is a story of a hovering. This guy that wrote to me is convinced that it was not a passenger jet, but it was somehow disguised to look like one. This is the email, quote, leaving work one night, stone cold sober. I had a job that was physically impossible to do with the slightest of alcohol or drug impairment. It takes precision. I kind of don't want to give my identity or make it easy to figure out who I am. So just think of something along the lines of almost like precision brain surgery, or a pro athlete, or somebody that needs the concentration of advanced mathematics. And you get the idea of someone that needs to be totally sober at work. So it's about 10 p.m. and I just left the parking lot and I'm driving to a four-way stop. I'm about to pull my car into a huge grocery store, one of those big 24-hour ones. And it's about 150 to 200 yards away on the right side of the road. And directly above the grocery store, I see something like a super low altitude passenger jet with all the lights on and a blinking light. Later, I looked up what a blinking light means. This is me talking now. And it actually is supposed to mean that the aircraft is carrying passengers. I didn't know that, but I kind of looked that up. Quote, I'm quoting the email again. What got my attention, besides it being only 50 feet above the store, is that it had a huge bank angle. I'm not a pilot, but what I was looking at seemed impossible. Besides the super, super low altitude, it was banking at like 45 degrees. And after a few seconds, I noticed a third thing that was totally impossible. This so-called passenger jet was supposedly flying at a walking pace. I don't mean figuratively. I mean the time that it took this thing to make it from over the building to the parking lot was about 15 to 20 seconds. So since I wasn't driving fast, I pulled my car over right away when I saw that, and I started fumbling for my phone in the dark. Now, this fake plane was getting closer to me. I was basically parallel with it, and with my car pulled over at the four-way stop just outside the parking lot. I was actually getting nervous, and I rolled while I rolled the passenger window down, and I pointed my cell phone out the passenger window. And then my app comes up, and it's one of those weird, annoying text boxes. Like it was the first time I turned my camera on or something, and it was asking me one of those questions that you have to hit the X to close the box or hit something so I could start recording video. And me doing this while I was putting my car in park and rolling down the window and it being dark, I promptly dropped my phone and fumbled around for it again. So my phone ended up going under a seat or between one of the seats, and it was dark. So I kept staring at the airplane, and I pretty much stopped and just focused on this airplane at this point. And I noticed, and I kept mental note of a number of items. One, it was painted like a two-tone gray or an off-white darkish color without any company logo or numbers or letters, but if somebody just glanced at it, the two-tone color scheme seemed like a normal paint job. Another thing was all the passenger windows had that slide-down window cover thing shut. Those things that passengers can use to go to sleep and get the sun out of their eyes as they're flying in the airplane. Another thing, there was no landing gear extended, even though it was just basically hovering. And the cockpit window was somehow impossible to see into. I was that close where I could see all that, and I was close enough to see pilots if they were there. And this thing had some type of glass that you could not see in for the pilot cockpit glass. After I stopped the car and pointed my phone at it, the craft then rotated the cockpit to my direction. And lowered the altitude further to just above the electrical poles or telephone lines that were around us. This made me very uncomfortable, and honestly, I said a quick prayer not to be abducted. Yeah, no shiz. I had the distinct impression that my vehicle was now being scanned, though I don't know why I thought that. Since I didn't see anything and nothing exactly happened, I couldn't feel anything. I just somehow got that idea that I was being scanned and my vehicle was being scanned. So now this thing was directly over my car at the four-way stop. There was no other traffic around, just what was going on in my car and right above me. So I stuck my head out of my driver's side window this time and got a good look at the underbelly of this craft. It appeared to be just a regular 747 or a 737 passenger jet, but it was just sitting there above my car. After it did whatever it was doing, it slowly went on its way, and this is where it gets even weirder. My personality type would be to dig my phone out and chase this thing. I could easily start snapping pictures or taking video right now, and I would seem to think of a reason not to. And I thought to myself, should I grab my phone right now and follow it? But I didn't move a muscle towards my phone. I looked at the lights go further and further away. He means the lights of this airplane. I could have easily caught up to it. I could have easily started filming it, but I didn't. I didn't move a muscle, and that's not me. So I pulled my car into a nearby plaza and looked at the time to see if it generally matched a few minutes after I left work. I guess he was checking to see if he had missing time or if he got abducted. And he said, and the time did match, so I wasn't abducted. But I wonder what happened to make me let this thing go like that, without even trying to take a picture. So to him, he said that was a bit frightening, but he's glad that he got away the way he did. So I guess he's looked into other cases, and he's like, I got off easy as long as I didn't get brought up on some ship and get laid down on one of those metal tables and operated on or something. So I thought that was interesting. I'd like to thank everybody for checking out the podcast. Please click the RSS feed and keep checking for the new episodes coming up. I'd like to thank my first Patreon, Roxy, and the music is by Downbeat88. The opening track is called The Dark, ending outro track is called Moment of Peace. Thanks so much, and see you soon. Have a good day. Bye.